And I felt better than I had when the priest came. But I felt better, like, it's going to be okay. And then they left for a time and I fell asleep. And then when I woke up, my hospital room was filled with so much light. Like, it's hard to describe what that's like, but it's like this just, it permeated every cell because it was unconditional love. And there was this figure in front of me.
Before we dive in, just a quick favor. If you're enjoying what we're doing at Angels Among Us, please take a second to rate and review the show. And if something in today's episode touches your heart, please share it with a friend. Welcome to Angels Among Us, the podcast where we share real stories of angelic encounters. Each episode, you'll hear firsthand accounts of divine protection, guidance, and miraculous interventions that remind us we're never truly alone. Whether through a whisper of comfort, an unseen hand of protection, or an unmistakable presence, angels are closer than we think. Join us as we explore these powerful experiences of angels, both seen and unseen. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Angels Among Us. Michaela and I here, Michaela and Brent. We're joined by Bridget Cook-Burch. We're really excited. Bridget was another referral, this one from Alicia, and Bridget is Alicia's co-author on her book, Angel in Arlington. We are excited. I chatted with Bridget a few days ago. It might be a couple weeks ago now. We chatted for a little bit, had a really good conversation. So again, I know Bridget better than Michaela does. But we're excited to hear what she has for us. So Bridget, I'll turn it over to you. Go ahead and give a brief introduction and we'll get going.
Okay. Well, I'm Bridget Cook-Burch, as you mentioned. Michaela, I'm also delighted to meet you. And I just have enjoyed the two of you and your very inspirational stories, and then also the guests that you bring on. So thank you. I think we're going to have fun tonight. So this will be great. So I'm a nerd. I will tell you that right now, just through my experiences. Like, I love science and spirituality and where they connect. And to me, that's just, it's incredible. So I love, like, the Heart Math Institute, and I am intensely spiritual, but I also enjoy studying many different religions around the world and schools of thought and philosophy and other things. And it's amazing how much we have in common. And then the things that we don't have in common, it's really beautiful to explore and, to meet people and to be able to share experiences and things like that. So thanks for asking me, something quirky about me, because I'm just a nerd.
I think we're all a little quirky.
All? Yeah.
Yeah. And, I'm super weird to some people, and Michaela obviously thinks I'm normal. Or maybe not.
Match our level of weird. So
That's
there you
right.
go.
Yeah.
My husband and I, we do that. We match each other's levels of weird. It's great.
That's what makes it all work, right?
That's right.
Well, Bridget, we'd love to hear your different experiences. I know you have a number of them. So go ahead and start from the beginning, or whatever you feel compelled to share.
Okay. Well, I'll start with when I was young. I had 3 sets of parents by the time I was 6 months old, and I had this deep wound inside, but I wasn't conscious of it. I just knew that I didn't ever feel like I was enough. That I must not have been, good enough, smart enough, pretty enough, whatever it was, that my parents had to give me up for adoption. And I had really great adoptive parents, just fantastic people, but, I still had this, this core wound that was going on inside. And so it affected a lot of my life and my choices. And I was always, like, kind of in this constant war I grew up Catholic in a little Mormon town, which was really interesting, because there was a certain amount of prejudice, and I had older brothers and a sister, and they were massive partiers, and I wanted to become a nun, so I had all these like various voices and different things in my mind, but honestly, I didn't feel worthy to become a nun. I made all kinds of mistakes, and even when I set out to go to college, like I just wanted to prove myself. I wanted to prove that I could make myself into something, that I could be, something significant and help people. But I was failing radically. My first year of school, it was so bad. I had to switch colleges and move up to a small town college and just start over. But even then, it was like I was working 3 jobs. I was going to school. My budget was shot. I just kept getting further and further in debt. I didn't want to ask my parents for help. I was like extremely fiercely independent. Like, I can do this. I can pull myself up by my bootstraps. But I just kept sinking further into the mud. And there came a time when I got really, really sick, and I didn't know what was going on with me. And I don't know about you guys, but that's the time that I would get vulnerable. Is if I ever felt sick, I wanted my mommy. So here I am trying to be the big old adult in the world, but I climbed into my little truck and I had $5 for gas that I had earned as a waitress the night before, and put $5 in gas, and I just drove down this big steep canyon to go see my mom, and I was shaking, and I was like, I don't know if I have a bad flu, I don't know what's going on. But the whole time I was driving down, all I could think of was all the places in my life where I had screwed up, like all the relationships, all the frustrations, all the lies, because I didn't want anybody to know how bad I was doing. Just those things that, can tear a young person apart. But I didn't think that anybody else was having a problem. I thought I was very alone. Like everybody else had their stuff together and I was the only one not getting it. Like everybody got a manual and I didn't. And I made it to my mom's house and, pulled up in front of her house, and I could barely drag myself up the driveway for 2 reasons. One was just I was so emaciated. I was so tired. And the other was I just was in this complete surrender of what a failure I was. And I was about to meet the person that I wanted to please the most. And so it was really hard for me to even, knock on her door. And she came to the door, and then she took one look at me and she's like, we've got to get you to the doctor. Like she just ushered me straight out the door, and I'd lost 30 pounds in 3 days. I knew I was sick, but I didn't know I was that sick. And she rushed me over to the doctor, and luckily it was right next door to the hospital because I absolutely just collapsed and went unconscious. And so they took me over, put me into emergency surgery, and they found that I was full of sepsis. I had pints and pints and pints of infection. A lot of it had to do with I had ulcers and fissures in my colon. I had another infection, and everything was just roiling in that area. So they pump out all this stuff. And I'm so emaciated that they had to give me an intravenous antibiotic. And they had to give it to me in what's called a subclavian. And it was kind of crazy because they gave me a whole bunch of different kinds because they weren't sure what the bacteria would show, I guess. And what none of us knew was that I was allergic to one of them and it was killing me. So I was already emaciated. I was already running these super high fevers. I was already in trouble, and now I'm dying. And so I'm barely hanging on for a couple of days. And finally, my mom went home to get a little bit of rest. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm listening to these nurses outside in the corridor, and they said, "Gosh, I think we better call her mom back because she's not going to make it until morning." I don't know about you, but like, even though I was screwing up life, I never thought that I was going to die. Like that's something old people do, right? And I had never, like, all of a sudden here I am in this hospital bed and I'm like, I'm, I'm done. And there was a part of me, you guys, that I was just, I, I knew that I had not fulfilled the measure of my creation, but I had no idea what that was. I had a good friend of mine one time, and he talked about, what does it mean to fulfill the measure of your creation, and he said when he was a kid, he was a farmer boy, and for a lot of entertainment, they would have these potato guns, and you shoot each other with potatoes. And one day his mom forced him to clean his room, and he's cleaning out the room, and all of a sudden he sees that there had been a potato that had rolled under his bed, which could be really bad, right? But instead, it had shot clear under his bed and out into the light, the sunlight of the room, this little green shoot, um, to be alive. And he said in that moment, he realized that potato had done more to fulfill the measure of its creation than he ever had. And that story has stuck with me because I think that that's how I felt in that room, was like, I knew I was here for a purpose, but I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. I just knew what I wasn't doing right. And it was about everything. And so I had this deep yearning. I also had my mother's prayers, which I call intercessory prayers. I think she interceded on my behalf. I also had a roommate, and she and her husband had been reading from something called the Big Book. And, you're supposed to stay anonymous, but I had been through a 12-step group, and it was like this one thing that had brought me back to God. And I heard that language, and something stirred inside of me and stirred inside my soul. And so she and I talked a little while, but then she said, "You know you're dying, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And we had a situation where her husband was a member of clergy, and he came over in the middle of the night with this other gentleman, and they gave me a blessing. And I felt better than I had when the priest came. But I felt better, like, it's going to be okay. And then they left for a time, and I fell asleep. And then when I woke up, my hospital room was filled with so much light. Like, it's hard to describe what that's like, but it's like this just, it permeated every cell because it was unconditional love. And there was this figure in front of me. I knew exactly who he was. He was Christ. And I just recognized him that fast. And I'm like, oh, and the thing to me that still sticks out as one of the most incredible things was how everything in the room vibrated with his love. Like, his love was so palpable and so powerful that my skin, like every atom of my skin, was tingling and vibrating with his love. I could feel, my body vibrating with his love. My metal tray table on the hospital bed, those ugly old things that they have, everything was vibrating with his love. And he let me know I was being given a second chance at life. And it was really incredible because I didn't I didn't feel worthy of it, but it was also, I get to do what I came here for. And I don't know what the heck that is, but it was like, I get to do this. I get to do this thing. And so anyway, I finally fell asleep. When I woke up, my fever was down. The nurse is coming in. She's just grinning broadly. She brings me more of these intravenous antibiotics. And I knew something I didn't know when I went to bed the night before. I said, "Hey, I can have any one of these, but I cannot have this one." She goes, "What are you talking about? These are the only things saving your life. We thought we were going to lose you last night." And I said, "No, this one's killing me. I cannot have it." And I'd never spoken back to an authority figure before, especially not a doctor or a nurse. In my family, they were like God, you listen to everything that they said. So she goes running off to tell the doctor, this girl is a French fry shy of a Happy Meal. But I just knew. I somehow had that knowledge. And fortunately, the doctor came in to talk to me and he asked me what had happened that I somehow knew this. So I shared the story with him. And fortunately for me, he'd had other patients who'd had near-death experiences or other, situations or visitations. And he's like, well, we can take her off, this one. She's on all the rest of these. And I walked out of the hospital the next day within 24 hours on my own power. And so it was this incredible experience, but it really set me on a new and different course of life. The biggest thing was, he loved me so much. And if he could love me, then how much could he love other people, And I got to look into the eyes of people, my nurses, my doctors, the staff on the way out, students at school, like all of these things, people I was running into, and I could see love in their eyes. And it was like I could see what God sees in them. I didn't see the games they were playing in life. Sometimes I had to be careful, but I just would see like, them and who they really are behind the mask, behind the games we play, behind our ego, all the things that I already knew really well because I had lived that way for so long. And it was really cool. It set me on the course of what I do now, which is writing these extraordinary stories of people, stories of transformation. So, I've written some books that have been fortunate enough to be on Oprah and Dr. Phil and Dateline and CNN and other things, these incredible stories of transformation. And it's because I know that it's possible for any one of us. That no matter the dark that we ever come from, that we are capable of so much light. And oftentimes it just takes one person to believe in us or for us to know that we're not alone. I thought I was so alone. And turns out I'm not. And neither are you.
Okay, we can end there. Oh my goodness.
I have to tell you, that is one of my favorite stories I've ever heard. And
Thanks.
I've heard similar stories, right? We hear these near-death experiences and stuff. But to be able to be sitting down with you live and hearing you tell that experience, it hit me way different than those other stories have. And I love it so much. It was, I love it. And for any of our previous guests that are listening, it's not that I didn't love your stories, okay? But, no, it was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And I do have a couple thoughts, if you don't mind. First of all, sepsis, especially back then, I think we could look up statistics on it. The mortality rate back then, even I only know this because I have a sister who went through sepsis, and that was 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think then it was about a 50% mortality rate. And I don't remember, did you say what year it was? That I don't want you to age yourself at all, but
I mean, it's not going to.
Double the years of your sister. We'll just go like that.
So yeah, I'm sure those nurses, to know what you were going through and to see how sick you were, they were talking about the possibility of you not making it, and that was a reality for them. And I also think it's, as humans, you were sick, really sick, and physically, right? and you wanted to be as tough as you could, and you waited really until the very last second. And I think a lot of times we do that spiritually as well, is we think we're in a better place than what we are. We don't know how sick we are spiritually. And a lot of times we get to the very brink and before we really recognize that something is wrong. And so I had that thought come to my mind with you. You're just trying to tough it out. And as a man, too often I try to just tough it out, right? Or not talk about some of the issues that I'm going through or whatever, but get help, right? Don't let yourself get to almost dying or spiritually dying before you seek the help that you need and that so many people are willing to give. And you talked about feeling alone. We've all been there. And it's to be in that moment, to feel the way that you did going into the hospital, and then to have that experience with the Savior, and for you to be thinking the things about yourself, and then to feel and to see the amount of love that He has for you. It's like, this is the Savior of the world, and if He can love me in a different way than I've ever experienced before, then how can I not love myself or think better of myself, right? And then in turn, having that experience, you were able to love everyone around you differently and better. And I've never had an experience quite like that, but I have felt His love, and it is powerful, and it changes me, right? And I hope that it continues to change me so that I can continue to love better and try to love more like He loves. And I'm not perfect, and I probably got upset at some people today as I'm out on the road working, right? But that just needs to be something that I'm more aware of and striving to be better. And I could go on and on about what you just told us. I loved it. So
as we
thank you.
just told her that, we listen to these podcasts and they take over the conversation.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I love the metaphor. I think it's beautiful. Go ahead.
I do want to just add this. I think that the reason why I loved that so much is because through all of these interviews, and when people have had a similar situation as you, we get to learn of Christ in more ways, right? Like hearing how you felt and that love, radiated through the whole room. Like these are just new things that we get to learn of Christ and how He shows His love. And every single story, it's like it's the same, but it's different. And I've never heard it in that type of way. So thank you for sharing, because I just learned something new about Christ and your experience. So okay, we want to listen to more of your stories, because we could end here and that would be an amazing episode, but it sounds like you have more, so we would love to hear more.
Well, thank you. I'm very honored. It's one of those things, like I usually the person behind the camera taking picture. I'm often, behind the keyboard, writing someone's story or coaching someone in their stories. And so it's, sometimes, I can speak on a stage and do fun things, but to be asked about my story, sometimes I get a little, just a little discombobulated, we will say. But I want to share, just how that love really transformed the stories that I was telling myself. Because, for so long, it's like, you're not good enough, you're not significant enough, you're not smart enough, you're not whatever. And then to be loved so unconditionally. Now, I do have to tell you, because I recently had another spiritual experience with him where he let me know I had lied to myself after when I got out of the hospital. And I said to myself, there must be something worthy of saving, right? So then I had to prove I was worthy of saving. And so it's funny, even when we have these beautiful, powerful experiences, how the mind can twist and, take us down another road. But I will share with you some beautiful miracles that happened because of that. I learned to give myself grace. I learned to forgive a lot of my past. And I'd done, some pretty remarkable work through the 12 steps. I had written down, I did, fourth and fifth step, and you expose everything that you have done, and where you've been hurt, and especially where you've hurt others. And, at the time I was Catholic, and I had taken it to a priest and he's like, all I need to know are the worst ones. And I'm handing him a novel and I'm like, this is all the worst ones. He's like, okay, let's go through it. And then I got all done and he's like, I want you to take this home and I want you to torch this puppy and let all the ashes, and the flames and the smoke go up to God in celebration of the life you are leaving behind. So I had done some of that work, but this was the first time I offered myself grace, because I learned it from him. And then as I went out into the world, I learned how to give that to others too. And for the first time I could ever look into the mirror and see that there was love there. And the coolest thing was just to look into anyone's eyes and to be able to see love there. And it was such a gift. And so I started working with people that I probably would have been afraid of before this experience. Like all of a sudden I was not afraid of people. I just loved them. And sometimes they didn't know what to think of me. I was that nerd, right? They're like, who is this? Like, we don't know what to do with her. But I started working with gang kids in Denver, and these are kids who, have grown up completely surrounded by gangbangers, mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, aunt and uncle, all their cousins. Like, this is the only world that they would know until something would happen, an incarceration, an arrest or something, and they'd be in this community learning centers that I went to work for. And they had someone who loved them enough to show them a different way, like what had happened to me. And some of these kids, they couldn't take that love. They had to walk away from it. They went down a darker path. Some of these kids, they did this complete 180. And I fell in love with the human soul. And so, we had been living in Colorado and loving it there. But there was a time that it was time for us to move back into the Utah area. And I wanted to bring some of this openness that I had discovered. I'd been on a really intense spiritual journey, was converted to a different church. I was just in love with the Holy Spirit and in love with life and people and this planet and all of creation. But I was like, oh, I want to tell a story. And I thought it was going to be a fictional novel. I woke up in the middle of the night when we were on vacation and I wrote and wrote and wrote for hours. And I just knew that I had the makings of the most incredible best-selling novel. And it was all about this skinhead who changes his life and then he's teaching other kids to stay out of gangs. So it's redemption and transformation, all the things that I had experienced and that I had experienced through these kids and I knew was possible. But it was kind of crazy because it was like, what are skinheads? I don't even know what they are. Those are none of the gangs that I had worked with in Denver, but it was so poignant in my dream. So I have to look up things on the internet and do some research. And I come across this guy's website and he has a little bit about himself written down, and everything that he had written down about his life and everything I had written about in my fictional novel were in tandem. And I discovered that the hero of my story is a real person. And I'm like,
Oh my
okay,
gosh, I just got
this is
chills.
crazy. And then he says, oh, by the way, I recently converted to a church. If you want to know more, click here. And then he also said, and by the way, I'm looking for someone to write my life story. If you know of anyone, have them call me. And I thought, this guy's going to think I am a kook. I'm crazy. I've been writing his story, but I thought it was fiction, you know. But I called him, and he had a writer from Newsweek. And I'm like, okay, well, I won't publish this. Whatever this is all about, it felt so divine. It felt so just guided and directed, you know, in my dream and everything. But I'm like, I'm not going to publish this because you're real. I think it's important for you to get credit. And he said, thank you. And what I didn't know was that a movie had been made about his life, but they'd never given him credit. It's called American History X. It had come out some time ago. And so when I said this honoring thing to him, when his writer from Newsweek flaked out, he said, would you write my book? And I'm like, oh, heck yeah. So I got to write that book, and it has saved lives. It has done all kinds of things inside and outside of prison. TJ was on the Gangland series on the History Channel. He's on Dr. Phil. He was on White House crime panels, did all different kinds of things. It was really, you know, it was my first book. I was figuring things out. But it was really beautiful. And one of the things I get emotional about is that a couple years after we had written the book, and TJ's just going strong, speaking nationally and internationally. He's doing work for the Simon Wiesenthal Museum of Tolerance. He's, you know, making all these connections. He's helping all these kids to get out of gangs. And then he had a stroke. He had an aneurysm in his brain, and he had a stroke, and suddenly he couldn't talk. And that book became his voice. And it just was one of those things like, what if I had said no? What if I said this was too scary? What if I didn't believe? What if, right? He wouldn't have his stories, his compilation, his transformation from being this really hard-headed, stubborn gang member to becoming a father. And then he became a convert to the LDS church, and, you know, just doing all these crazy, wonderful things. And I wouldn't have done it had I been afraid. And so I just have felt all this honoring. And I heard this quote from Mother Teresa. She said, I am the pen in the hand of a God who is writing a love letter to the world. And oh, I took that inside of myself as my why, my mission, you know, that fulfilling the measure of your creation. Like, I know who I am and why I'm here. I get to be a pen in the hand of a God who is writing a love letter to the world. It's crazy because my books, most people would not consider those like light and fluffy and unicorns and rainbows. I've written about the daughter of a serial killer and how she was able to overcome her past. There's a series out on Paramount Plus, 15 years after the book came out. That one came out on Oprah. I wrote about the 19th wife of 65 women who was able to go up against Warren Jeffs and the FLDS and put a prophet pedophile behind life and 20 years because of her incredible courage. Written about the sculptor of the Statue of Responsibility that we're going to have an opportunity to see in our lifetime, that's being built in honor of Dr. Frankl from who survived Nazi German concentration camps. So I get to write these like really delicious stories of transformation. And as much as my older brother would love them to be about unicorns and rainbows, I told him that they're just in disguise. So.
That's amazing. Wow.
Well, it's it's clear to see why you were saved. Mm-hmm. And one more thought, from your previous experience and kind of being able to listen to how it all unfolded, is when you had that experience with Jesus, he didn't tell you what your mission was at that point, right? He didn't sit there and say, you're going to do this and then this and then this. This is why I'm saving you. He just said that he was giving you another chance. Mm-hmm. And in life, there's not a real roadmap, right? It's about trying to figure out who we are and what he needs us to do. And and it's so inspiring to see what you've been able to do with that. And I think internally we look at people like you, Bridget, that have done such incredible, inspiring things, and it can be easy to be like, well, what am I doing? You know? Mm-hmm. And I think as long as we as individuals have that attitude of, I can do more, I think I need to do more, what is it? And as long as we're continually searching for that, I think we're going to be on a pretty good path. And we can't compare ourselves to other people.
No.
Right?
Comparison is the thief of joy. I agree 1,000%. Yes.
Yeah, but you make it really easy to be like, I am a loser.
That's what not this is supposed to be all about. It's like, I was the loser, like literally was the loser, but he loves each of us this much. And the thing I've been learning too, Brent, is it's and I love that name because it's my son's name. It's also, you mentioned the doing. And, we're in a culture of a lot of doing, like I need to do better. I need to do. And I'm learning that it's about the beingness, the power of I am as a divine daughter of God, right? The power of how can I embody that love on an even greater scale? How can I live this way a little bit more today? As an author, I get to read and incredible stories, and I get to coach people on their incredible stories, but every one of them teaches me. They transform me with the power of what they have lived and learned and loved, and it's really cool. There's a book that I was reading, a young man with Down syndrome, he and his dad, he could have easily been in a situation where his dad would be like, okay, you can eat Cheetos and watch TV for the rest of your life. But instead, he was always wanting to inspire his son. And he asked his son, what do you want? Who do you want to be? What do you want to do in life? But what do you want to be in life? And his son said, I want to do things, but I want to date. I want to marry. I want to have a family. I want to be like you, Dad. And just how beautiful that is. But he also, is has Down syndrome, and people would put him in a box like we would the gang members, or like people would do the loser that I was. And his dad loved him enough to look at what was possible rather than the labels, rather than you're a loser, you can only do these many things. And he taught his son a principle about 1% better every day. Sometimes that's one more lap around the block, one more lap in the pool, one more mile, one more this. And, his son was the first person with Down syndrome to run a triathlon. like amazing things. And then he was able to do some cool stuff in the Special Olympics. And one of my authors, her name is Wendy Hooten, and she loves huge, just huge. And she has, both of her parents have passed, but they continue to guide her from the other side as she's taking care of her own son. His name is Matt. He's super Matt, with Down syndrome, but these same qualities of seeing what is possible in her son. So she's written a book and is taking him on a whirlwind tour, and they're just lighting up people's lives wherever they go. And so I love what you said, Brent, and also just like this, there's so much less we have to do and so much more we're invited just to be. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. That's beautiful.
Before we end, you had mentioned something about your dad, and I don't know if you're willing to share that story with us, but I would love to hear that.
Yeah. Well, my dad died young at only 72, and he was an engineer. He worked out at Morton Thiokol. He was very left-brained, and if you can't tell, I'm very right-brained, creative, expressive. And he was the engineer with the precise handwriting and, everything written down. And he was a very loving man and absolutely loved my mother. And he had contracted cancer, and I went to talk to him about some things that I had learned. And I'm like, hey, did you know at Huntsman Cancer Institute, they do these things like, encourage you to create a far off goal, to create something that you're in your mind's eye. It's crazy. You would have never done it, like rock climbing or something else. And I was like, what if you and Mom, because you love to travel, what if you picture a place you've never been and you've always wanted to go, and you start to plan it? And he said, sweetheart, I'm not dumb enough to think that I can think my way out of cancer. I said, okay, Dad. And I just knew the conversation was over, and I'd had my own experiences, right? But I knew the conversation to honor him was over. So I let it be. And he passed. And then, I was working on this book called The Witness Wore Red, the one I told you about, the 19th wife of 65 women. And, I had, Rebecca knows this, so it's okay for me to share, but when I was contemplating writing the book and, what was going to happen, I lived in this little place called Mountain Green as a single mom with 3 kids. And, all of a sudden, my mountainside was full of people. And they were all the ancestors of Rebecca and a lot of people who came from polygamy. And so all of these people who had passed, and it was as if they felt something significant was going to happen. And it wasn't me. It was her courage to tell her story, to break the cycles of what was happening in this culture of 10,000 people. And she was incredibly courageous. Like, she taught me so much and continues to do so. But I'm overwhelmed because I'm seeing and feeling these different presences of her grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents and cousins and, all of these people. And then there was this red angel. And I had experienced some angels before. There had been one in the room, the hospital room with Christ. He was just back in the corner, but so bright, so beautiful. But this one, he was wearing red, and it was so amazing. I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is all about, but it was so amazing because he helped us to come up with the name of the book, The Witness Wore Red, because when Rebecca went up against Warren Jeffs, one of Warren Jeffs, he was just like this maniacal dictator of his people. They couldn't read the newspaper or listen to television or radio or ever be on the internet. The only books they were allowed to read was anything that he had written or that, he pulled out pictures and other things, but it was only the things that he allowed. And he was just manipulating everyone to this nth degree. They were so afraid of not reaching salvation, and he had them at the throat. And so when I heard about Rebecca's story, I just knew it got to be written. And here he inspires us with this name, The Witness Wore Red. And there were some other ways that he showed up in the process in just a beautiful way. And, when she first got out, she could not even stomach the word God because Warren had twisted it so terribly. But deep inside, she was a very spiritual person. So it was lovely as she was growing and learning how she was able to come back to her own spirituality, not religion because of that, but spirituality in an intense degree. And I was trying to, I wanted to know this angel's name. He would show up every once in a while. It was always really powerful. I'm like, what's your name? And he said it starts with a D. And I was thinking, oh, Dominique, or, something elegant and Italian for some reason. I don't know. But I thought this is, who this is. And I could never quite see his face, but I could feel his presence often when I was really blue or when I felt overwhelmed. So we're getting ready for the book to come out. My daughter was driving home from work in my car. She's a teenager and she'd fallen asleep at the wheel. And thank heavens she was safe, but my car was completely destroyed. And here I am, a single mom, and the only money that I had was a $5,000 check. And that was all I was going to be able to replace. And I was living in Mountain Green with my kids. We had to have 4-wheel drive. I'm like, there's just no way this is going to work. But I had a friend who could get vehicles at auction. And he said, I think I may be able to do something for you for that $5,000. The next thing I know, he shows up at my work in a bright red Ford truck. And it was so awesome. And I was like, I can't believe this. I can't believe that you did this. And he said, I had some help. And he wouldn't tell me the whole story, but he just kept saying, I had some help. And so I was so grateful. And then I go to pick up my mom to take her to the doctor. And she's still living in that small town that I was telling you about. I go to pick her up and all of a sudden she stops short when she sees my bright red truck and she goes, oh, your dad would have loved that truck. And all of a sudden I hear him chuckling. He had this big belly laugh when he was here on the planet. And I hear him just chuckling. And I was like, Dad, why didn't you tell me? And he said, do you remember what I told you before I passed away? That I wasn't stupid enough to think that I could think my way out of cancer. And I said, yeah. He said, would you have believed it was me? And I said, no, I wouldn't have. I would have been holding him still in this place instead of the elevated place to which he was able to come from, on the other side, like that greater spiritual light and knowledge. So we are so surrounded all the time. And that's just one story of so many. But I'm glad that you brought up, Brent, that we can't compare. I think I just learned to be very open, and the more open we learn to be, the more we watch and we don't wait for miracles, but we be a part of them. Miracles happen, but we are the miracle on this planet. Our time here is precious. So what can we do, but especially what can we be?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm almost jealous that you have these spiritual gifts, and you're able to have these connections to angels. And Brent and I, ever since we started this, I hear these stories and I'm like, I want that so bad. Like, how do I get that? Like, how do I get closer to these angels or, people that have passed? And Brent has that gift as well. And I just, hearing your story has just inspired me to just become closer to our Savior and know that He will give that to me. And something that you said was grace. Like, I think that we're so hard on ourselves sometimes. And through this podcast, I've learned a different side of grace that I've never thought before. And sometimes I judge myself like you, like I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough. But hearing other people's stories of like their encounters with Christ, it has taught me that He really does love us, and we are way too hard on ourselves, and he's not judging us like that. He's not thinking the things that we are thinking. That's Satan. And I hope I can have those encounters like you have. And if it's not here, then, I know that I'll hopefully one day be able to meet Him and face Him, head on. And I don't know. Sometimes I lose my thought, but
You and me both. I understand that.
Bridget, so along that's kind of what I was going to ask. If there are people out there that are listening that believe you, but don't think that it's possible for them to have those type of experiences or encounters, either with the Savior or with their loved ones who have passed on, what's a little bit of encouragement or some advice in helping them overcome that?
Well, I think the biggest pattern that I have seen and witnessed in other people as well as in myself is the beauty of surrender, like of first gratitude, and then also surrendering, like surrendering the false ideals, surrendering the world's idea of success, surrendering, like I have to surrender all the time. I have, we all, how shall I say this? We all have proclivities. We all have egos. We all have issues. If we're honest, we're messy humans. We are such messy humans. And so I really feel like the best way to find your gifts is to surrender and then to ask. Because that your angels are just waiting to show up. And sometimes I'm still too fierily independent. I still think I have to do so many things on my own. And then I get a loving, tap on my shoulder, or sometimes another Mack truck, where it's like, oh yeah, I have a whole legion. They want to help. I'm like Rebecca. When I'm breaking a life cycle, when I'm breaking chains, when I'm breaking epigenetics, when I'm, breaking addiction or abuse or whatever it is, it helps to heal generations forward and back. And we have these mighty legions, mighty armies around us that have the desire to bring more light, more joy, more support into our lives. And here's the cool thing. Because you both have kind of mentioned, like I get a little jealous, or I wish I was more like this. And I'm the same way. So I understand. But I have learned that when we celebrate, instead of compete against someone, when we celebrate all the gifts, it's like we're saying to our Heavenly Father, like, thank you for showing me what is possible in a human being. I can't wait to discover what my gifts are. Thank you for showing me what is possible. And I feel like he brings more and more and more of those possibilities and people and situations, your podcasts, right? It just, you begin to create an attractive field that other people want to be a part of. And also, I would suggest heavenly beings wanting to celebrate you as well.
What a rich episode. I feel very lucky to have had you on our podcast, and I've learned so much from you in this short period of time. So thank you.
I was going to say, you're in the right profession because you have a way with words. I have clung on to every word, and I love it. I'll probably listen to this one a couple times over and over. And again, nothing against any of the other episodes, because all of our guests are incredible.
It just gets better, and they'll come back on, and then, and it'll just get better. So
we say that every time too, though. Like, it's like, wow, that was such a good episode. But this, you just, I don't know, you have a way of speaking and to the heart. So,
well, thank you. If I can have just one person feel the way that I did in that hospital room, right? Just one person feel that for themselves, then I feel like I'm fulfilling that measure of creation. Because it's the most powerful energy, the most powerful force in the universe. That's for sure. So thank you. I appreciate you two inviting me on. It's been a great honor.
For us, more so than for you, I'm sure. But before we go, we have to ask you, what is one thing that you know to be true?
Thank you. One thing I know to be true is that we are surrounded by light and love and goodness that wants for our very best, and that we are more loved than we even realize, even and especially in our darkest times. I used to work with a coach named Leo Widener, who was a coach before coaching was cool. And he said this thing that has stayed with me forever. He says, inside of our darkness lies the seeds of our greatest glory. And I believe that to be true. So even in the darkest of dark, there is a light. There is so much there that loves us and will love us to that better place.
Beautiful. And true. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for sitting with us, for inspiring us, and for shining your light, and for helping us to feel His love today. It's truly been an honor, and we're so thankful.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate you both. Have a wonderful night.
You as well. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Angels Among Us. You can find us on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow along for more stories of everyday miracles and reminders that angels are among us. If you have a story to share, please email or DM us with a brief summary. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, when we are waiting, God is working.